giving thanks for Blessed Father Seelos' ministry, we see certainly echoed today in the scriptures this whole ministry of teaching, of preaching, and the psalmist, the shortest of all the psalms in the gospel, in the book of Psalms, rather, Psalm 117, go out to all the world and tell the good news. This psalm often gets assigned to feast days for apostles, and it's a fitting text today as we celebrate one who did that. He was of German descent, Bavarian really, and felt called to be a missionary and literally felt called to go and do missionary work in the United States. So as he joined the Redemptorists, he sought to be sent to America as a missionary. And he served, as I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, both as a pastor, where he was rooted in a stable community here in Baltimore, and also as a missionary when he went on the missionary circuit, as many Redemptorists did in those days, and some still do, preaching parish missions and retreats. And when you look at all of the states he really covered most of what was then the United States, all up and down the East Coast, into the Midwest, from Michigan all the way down to Louisiana. At one point, he preached a 2-week mission in a parish in St. Louis, and that parish apparently today still has a great devotion to Blessed Father Seelos and has become somewhat of a shrine and place of pilgrimage where some of his relics are, simply because he was there for several weeks and left a mark. Jesus teaching the disciples to pray at their request says something about our spiritual life too, that we're always seeking to know how to speak to the Lord. And we never just land on one word, but we're always being drawn more deeply into this conversation because the Lord himself always has another word to speak to us. And so while we crave and cherish the words of the Lord in the Lord's Prayer because they're the words that the Lord himself gave to us, we have to be willing also to let other words well up in our hearts, because the Lord is always speaking a word to us, and we can't just land on the same word all the time, because eventually that word will be restrictive for us. It becomes easy when the Lord speaks some new call, speaks some new word for us to simply respond, no, I'm content where I am, where the Lord might be calling us to something else. Father Seelos demonstrates that nimbleness to go where he was called to go, to do what he was asked to do no matter where it took him. That rootedness in one thing didn't prevent him from listening to what the Lord was calling him to do next. And so while we cherish the words of the Lord's Prayer, we utter them because it really is the perfect prayer. In the midst of that prayer is words that enable us to be open always. Thy will be done. Hallowed be thy name. Putting God before ourselves. And that, when we do that, especially when we really mean it, we too have the same nimbleness to do exactly what the Lord asks, to go where the Lord asks, and let his will be done in us, no matter what it might mean for change in our own lives. So think today, as you look at Blessed Francis's itinerary, Google it, and look at all of the places he covered in his ministry, how much he did, how far he went. See the lengths to which the Lord might stretch us. And that stretching always means more opportunities for holiness, for grace, for God's gifts to be let into our hearts. If we limit ourselves, there's all this other blessing that the Lord might want to share with us if only we're willing to stretch that far. So we give thanks for Blessed Father Seelos. Let's see that example, that call to go into the whole world, to go where the Lord leads, to do what he asks, so as to receive what he wants to share with us.